Hello, and welcome to the Passion on Purpose Leaders on Center Stage podcast. I am Steph, and I'm the owner and creative director at VIM. VIM's mission is to showcase the enthusiasm and passion of business leaders nationwide. I cannot wait to have you listen to the show and stick around. At the end, we talk a little bit about how you can be my next guest. All right. We have Win Charles with Ask Win podcast, as well as Ask Win coaching services with us today. Win, thank you so much for coming on with me.
Well, thank you for having me on.
I'm absolutely, undeniably excited to have you on as a guest. When I went through briefly and looked at your website and how much passion you have for not just those who share, similar traits to what I know you're going to share with us today, but also the creative and the other, written form and art forms that you have a passion for, and kind of giving people a platform for that.
Yeah.
Like that wins my heart, like right off the bat, as a creative soul myself, but also as somebody who has a father and mother who both have brain injuries. And not trying to compare, anything here, but just having some experience in a very small way of what you probably have to go through and what others have to go through when they struggle with things. So I'm just really eager to kind of just throw the ball at you and let you introduce yourself, tell a little bit about your story and how Ask Win came to be.
Well, thank you, Hilary. And for those of you who are thinking, what is a strange person doing on Hilary's podcast? My name is Win Charles. I have a physical disability called ataxia spastic cerebral palsy. I know that's a mouthful. So what I want you guys to remember it as CP. Just remember it as CP. You don't have to remember the ataxia part. You don't have to remember the spastic part. You just have to remember its name as CP. And so the reason why Ask Win and my books came to be is I lost my biological mom in 2010. And as we record this on June 28th, it happens to be her birthday.
Oh.
So the reason why I do the work that I do is because she instilled in me to do the work that I do. And when she died, it was truly unbelievable. She got diagnosed with 3 brain aneurysms. One, I believe, was chronic, and the other 2 were too severe. She started having mild-grade seizures because of the brain aneurysms, and they put her mentally in this coma, and we were at the bedside practically every single day. I didn't want to leave my mommy's side, and so, but I had to because I had to go home and figure this out. And so, but the day she died, it was August 12th, 2010. I was not with her, but I was, fortunately, and I guess this was a sign, I packed long PJs. In all this chaos, I packed her PJs and they were put on me. And so, in the spirit of her body lifting, I felt the spirit come in to my body, and she was on death's door. Her numbers were going down on August 11th, and I was in the room when her numbers were going down. And what people didn't realize is I was watching the numbers go down. And I remember saying, she's gone, she's gone, she's gone. And my aunt, who was standing 10 feet away from me, says, you'll never get back. And I'm like, oh boy, that is a jab in the heart.
Yeah.
And I'm like, oh boy, here we go. And so I thought, through this whole process, I thought, okay, what am I going to do to leave a legacy of my mom and of my dad. And so I said, okay, I'll write a book. Well, we have a problem because I can't type. I can't type to save my life. So every day I would sit there and listen to a podcast called The Creative 10. And it taught me how to publish a book on my own, how to use speech dictation to write that book. And so every day for a year, I sat down in the afternoon and put music on and just dictated my heart out to that computer. That computer never worked so hard in its life, dictated my story out. And then I got it edited. And then I published it on Amazon. Well, it hit number one. And so not only did my friends, my family buy the dang copies of it, but strangers started buying the dang copies of it. And so I'm like, oh, now we have a problem because I'm like, oh, how am I supposed to extend the lessons of cerebral palsy? And I'm like, oh boy. And so then I went into a podcasting group. I didn't even know what the heck a podcast was, other than listening how to write a book about a on podcast. And so because my audio retention is better than my
Mhm.
physical retention of holding a book because I can't hold a book due to cerebral palsy. And so I didn't know what a podcast was. And then I'm like, so I get on Facebook. I ask the dumb and dumb question, which is not dumb, by the way. It's the old podcasters think it's the dumb and dumb question. What podcast host should I go with? And I'm so the response I got was, you should go with this one. And they're really, really good. Little old me finds out this information. Little old me signs herself up for a podcast account. And I'm like, now what? Well, little old me interviews the woman I've been following to write this book
Oh,
as my first episode on Ask Win. And I'm like, okay, this is, and people started listening, and it turned into a real green monster that I can't control. And then this year, I got invited to speak at podcast, sorry, in Orlando, Florida, run by Chris Comito, which is a fabulous event. If you guys are in the podcasting space and want to go hug the podcast creators and just hug them and chase them around in power chair. I make a joke with everyone who's down there. I call it chase power chair. And you know, people actually realize it's me in the power chair. People actually say, people stop me in the hallways and say, Win, this is truly you. Now I understand why you're so dang passionate about cerebral palsy. Now I understand the daily struggles you go through. Now, sometimes you have to take it offline and go hug people.
yeah.
Yeah,
Well, so okay. One, that is a lot to take in. So sorry to hear
yeah,
about the loss of your mother in 2010. And right, her passing fueled this desire to
yeah,
share about right what you go through with CP. And
yeah,
then I love that podcasting exists, right? Because what a beautiful platform for
yeah,
someone who can't type, who struggles with physical, like holding a book or writing with a pen or typing, right? I love that you found that. And I also, like you had said, I asked a silly question. It's never a silly question because you don't know what you don't know until you
yeah,
know it, right?
yeah. And I had no one teach me how to podcast. So this is why I turn around and teach others how to podcast, especially those with disabilities, because I had no one. I had no one. people looked at me like I was crazy-fied. And then on top of it, in 2019, I lost my dad to undiagnosed lung cancer.
Oh no.
And so that was a interesting little experiment in itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, he died 6 days after being diagnosed, and so I had to sell his house and move. I didn't know where I was going to move, but Arizona got thrown into the mix for amazing housing opportunity. And people are like, why did you move to Phoenix, Arizona? It's hot as hell. We were talking about this before.
Yeah.
And I'm like, because I got amazing housing opportunity that I couldn't turn down.
Right.
And so I am now sitting in my own condo and at a semi assisted living community, meaning they will help you, but they won't. Meaning you have to be highly functioning to be in here, but yet they will help you.
If
And Luna Azul is the first of its kind in the country to do this. And the developer's daughter has um, a disability herself. So he was looking up and down every which way to support his child. Couldn't find anything due to the complexities of her disability. And so he thought, well, why don't I just invest in building this beautiful community? And he built all these, we are a small complex of 30 homes, and he built all these homes from the ground up. And lo and behold, a family member of mine hands this to me while I am in a hotel waiting for my boiler to be fixed because my boiler decided to blow and I had to get out of my house so quickly. And I just said, I'm done. I was
Mhm.
99% positive I was going to buy a house on the East Coast,
Mm.
having all that put in place with help, obviously. And then I'm like, and then my aunt goes, here, look at this. And so I called, I was scared out of my wits' end. I called um, a Phoenix, Arizona phone number and I said, okay. And I remember the real estate agent answering the phone. And I said, look, I have cerebral palsy. What's the deal with this? And he goes, well, number one, Luna's rule is set up for people with disabilities. And I'm like, great. Now, how am I supposed to get to care? And he goes, you bring your own care in. And I'm like, well, anything is cheaper than Aspen, Colorado. And so, yeah, anything is cheaper than Aspen, Colorado at this point.
Yeah.
And I moving, and I did a two-state move by myself.
Wow.
I packed my car, my Dodge Caravan, handicapped accessible Dodge Caravan, with a duffel bag, a power chair, and a assistant that I barely knew in the midst of COVID. I moved in the midst of COVID.
Oh wow. Wow.
And I'm like, well, talk about taking a leap of faith. Talk
Yeah.
about taking a leap of faith. And then I tried to get a job down in Arizona. Well, that was a complete disaster and a half. All they wanted to stick me in was customer service. And I'm like, okay, vocational rehab, you're wonderful for some, but I'm too creative. People
Yeah.
are like, Win, you need to stick with your passion. Just because it says customer service doesn't mean it's all glamorous. And they go, Win, why don't you just stick with your passion, be retired, and be retired, and then do podcasting and educate people about CP. And so I closed my case with broken rehab. I said to those guys, I said, it was great working with you, but I would feel better doing my own thing.
Yeah. Yeah. So you wrote your book, you started the podcast, and then you had obviously naturally people who, have a disability or have CP coming to you and saying, I want to do more of what you've done, right? Teach me
Yeah.
how you've overcome what you've overcome and do. So how does that look if someone wants to work with you? What are their options to work with you?
They can contact me through my website. They can also contact my assistant. They can also contact me through Facebook, and we'll set up a time for them to meet, and we'll get them on the road to podcasting. And here's an interesting fact: over 1,000 podcasts sit in Apple Podcasts alone, and they have no published episodes. And seven podcasts, last time I looked, are related to cerebral palsy. Two of them belong to me.
Oh, so you definitely
So yeah,
are
and now I'm stepping away from the interview show. It got too much. I'm stepping away from the interview show and truly focusing on my passion, which is teaching people about CP.
So then on your podcast now, if my audience came and wanted to listen to an episode, is it a solo episode and you're giving people education around maybe hiring those with disabilities or housing? Like what is the content on your show currently?
The content on my show currently, I do it with my girlfriend, and my girlfriend also has CP, and we just talk about the struggles of women with CP, and I'm slowly but surely opening it up to more guest episodes and more content related to disabilities.
Yeah, I love that. And your book is still on Amazon, I'm assuming?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. The book is buried under 11 other books, but the book is still on Amazon now. I'm 11th time published author, and the book is buried. I like to say the book is buried under 11 other books, but the book is still on Amazon, still doing well, and it's called I, Win.
I, Win. Oh,
Yeah,
I love that.
yeah,
I absolutely love it. I know we'll link both your website and
yeah,
if I can, I'll link that Amazon link.
yeah,
As listeners are probably learning, you're going to be one of our earliest episodes. So
yeah.
still figuring out the nuts and bolts of things, but I will make sure that we can get things linked to you. One of the last things I just wanted to ask you is, and this is sometimes a hard question, but what is your why?
My why is my mom. My why is how I grew up. You will find out um, more about that in the book, more about as you follow my journey, you will find more about my why. And my why is my mom. My why is how she raised me to think that I still don't have a disability, but yeah, I do. And so my why is my mom, and I'll say that to the day I die, and not because it's the birthday, June 20th. My why is my mom and how she raised me.
Oh, I love that. I can't, what an honor to have you on the show today on your mom's birthday.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Well, thank you again so much, Win, for coming on the show. And I will make sure that all of you listeners will have all the links to access Win's information below. And until next time, we'll talk soon. Steph here. Thank you so much for listening to the Passion on Purpose Leaders on Center Stage podcast. If you are a successful business owner and you lead your business with passion, we'd love to feature you on our show. We'd love to share with the world what makes your business great and how you have intentionally led passion throughout your business. Also, if you got any value or little tidbits from this episode, please take a minute to screenshot the episode and share it on your favorite social media platform. Be sure to tag us so we can properly thank you, and we love deepening our connection with our listeners. We are regularly putting out new episodes to feature leaders such as yourself who lead with passion on purpose. So be sure to subscribe to our show so you don't miss any future episodes. For more episodes, guest information, or details on the show, please visit getvim.com/passion on purpose. That's getvim.com/passion on purpose. Once again, I'm Steph. I am the owner and creative director at Vim, and thank you for listening to the show.